Jeremy, you said you have something that you wanted to say. So please, the floor is yours.
I actually have two thoughts, but I'll start with the first one.
There we go.
The first one is, so again, one of the benefits to not doing a whole lot is it lets me clear my mind, and then I can think of things maybe a little bit more thoroughly. I have the benefit of hindsight and all that, but I'm also listening to podcasts, and I feel like I am now at the point where it's not that I'll start with Donovan Mitchell. It's not that I want Donovan Mitchell less. It's that there is just still less of a desire to go as far to getting him as there was before. So like beforehand, I said, my absolute max would be 2 unprotected firsts, 3 protected firsts, and Grimes. And I think with the protected firsts, it was more like one of those is going to be it's not going to be the Wizards pick, which I know you agree, John, is the most valuable. It's probably going to be the Bucks. It's going to be the Pistons. It's going to be the Mavs picks, those types of things. But thinking it through more and more, I understand Jazz fans would push back on it, and that's fine. But I'm at the point where I'm not giving up a max of 5 picks and Quentin Grimes. And I really like Grimes. I know you're a very big fan of his. For me, I'm trying to pump the brakes because of how exciting Summer League was, remembering it still was Summer League. There is the idea that he's starting, and it's more, I'm happy to see him start. I don't buy the idea of, you have to put Evan Fournier there because it's a sunk cost, because, that shouldn't matter. You just invested $104 million over 4 years in Jalen Brunson. So you'd rather have that be better maximized than being like, you spent money on both, so you have to play both together. You don't have to do that. But it's a feeling of where, for me, you don't have to get Donovan Mitchell right now. I've still been very much on the, hey, let's wait a year if we can do it train. If that's possible, great. If not, again, I just don't feel for the Knicks there's as much of a desperation side. That being said, I think both sides still agree to the deal because it just makes too much sense for them not to. But I've just kind of come off of the max price. It's now, if you're including Grimes and he's going through, then it's the 2 unprotected picks. They're going to be 24, 26. And it's going to be, maybe the Pistons pick and the Wizards pick, something like that. Or Wizards pick and the Bucks pick. Yeah. Something along those lines, but it's not going to be as overwhelming as possible. And I will say I've talked to him as well about this, but because when I was listening to you and John talk about the pod, and there's the mention of like, what happens if you give Danny Ainge a future first, like 27, 28 or 29? Yeah. And the thought I had was, I don't know if Ainge wants that, because that gives the Knicks the ability to build better in the shorter term. And then that could decrease the value of that future pick. So a long way of just saying maybe Ainge doesn't come down from his initial ask, and that's fine. He has every right to do it. Yeah. I just I feel like my ask or my max offer is coming down as the weeks.
I mean, what you're essentially saying is you're comfortable not getting Donovan Mitchell, because correct me. I mean, I don't know. I don't have words in your mouth. I don't think that offer is getting accepted by Danny Ainge. 3 of the protected picks and 2 Knicks picks in the years that you said, especially.
Yeah, it's more. It goes back to even what Fred Katz's article was, which is that the Knicks can offer an A-level package. And that, again, Jazz fans would say, we don't have to trade Donovan Mitchell. You're right. You don't. It's just a matter of, do you want to sit through another year where the Jazz got worse while pretty much every single team in the West got better, except for the teams that like the Spurs or the Rockets or the Thunder that really have no interest in competing whatsoever? Is that better than just kind of cutting the ties? And that's why I go back to the whole point of the Jazz have leverage because they have Donovan Mitchell, and the Knicks have leverage because they have the leading offer to get Donovan Mitchell. It can sway both ways, but both teams have some form of leverage here. It's just a blinking contest or staring contest until we get there. I feel, why push it? Let time go on.
Couple things. One, you've mentioned now a few times, Jazz fans may disagree. I don't really give a fuck what Jazz fans think.
Nor do I, but I know that Jazz fans, obviously...
I'm sure Jazz fans care what Jazz fans think.
Of course. They prioritize Donovan Mitchell in a way that we maybe don't. and I know you're a huge fan of Mitchell, and I'm a big fan too. I'd be happy to have him here. But it then goes back to the great newsletter you wrote, which is that if Danny Ainge thought that Donovan Mitchell was that elite, he wouldn't be trading him. But he is on the block.
Yeah, no, I all true. The second thing is as I'm taking next week off or trying to take next week off, I've been front loading newsletters, and I wrote for the first time, tried to do a little bit of a deep dive for myself more than anything about what next year's team would look like and how they would play, and maybe even what kind of record they would have, where they would fit in the East as currently constituted, not with Donovan Mitchell. And I got to tell you, as I was writing about it and I was thinking about it and I was thinking of, my God, this is going to be the best bench in the league. And I'm not sure it's going to be close. And the fact that they now have that horse who is an efficient horse in Jalen Brunson, like, it's exciting. Like I don't think anyone's talking themselves into like, oh, this is a team that is going to, win a playoff series. I'm not there, but I think it's going to be a good team. It's going to be a fun team. I think it's going to be a team that gets back to the ethos of the Big 15 season. All that being said, I think I would still go a little heavier on the package to get Mitchell, but I will say this: the longer it has gone on, like I will admit when objectivity eludes me, and I think when the initial wave of Donovan Mitchell emotion like kind of swept, like, holy shit, he's there. We're apparently the lead horse in this race to get him. We can get him. They want to get him. The Jazz want to get rid of him. Like all this stuff. It's like, oh my God, you start thinking about what is that going to look like? What where could this go from there? And I was very swept up in that. And I still want him for what he could do on the court. But I think as more time has gone on, as I'm saying these words, I picture how I would react if another team traded for him. And that's the thing that I keep coming back to. And that's the last thing I'll ask you before we move on. If you have your stance, right? You have your stance, like you're okay playing hardball, right? And I don't know, the Heat, the Raptors, the fucking whoever, pick a team, trades for him tomorrow. You're telling me, like, presuming it's a hefty package, I don't know what hefty is going to look like, but presuming it's a hefty package, you're telling me you'd be cool with that?
Yeah. I mean, look, here's the way I see it. I still don't see the Heat as having the necessary means. And I also don't think Pat Riley has ever really done that before. He's never made kind of that all-in deal, to my knowledge, where it's let's maximize this core, right? I mean, is there anything that you can think of? Like, well,
I mean, other than Shaq, but that's a different kind of animal,
right? And then he was, at the closer to the twilight of his career than he was his prime, or at least the beginning of it. Like
his prime was, the door on his prime was closing. It didn't quite close yet, but yeah, point taken.
Right. So if they have a lesser package and they're not able to do it, and you have, of course, I know it's always going to be business, but we know that there's a history with Ainge and Riley. It's not great. So, and I feel like they're not going to forget that and take a lesser package. But you're talking about the Raptors. Okay. I guess it'd have to be a 3-team deal, presumably, because they would want
doesn't
Fred
seem to want
or Gary Trent Jr., OG Anunoby. So they could, but they're also potentially in the midst of a KD pursuit. So that kind of gums up the works there. Yeah. And right. I still think the Hornets deal, I get what you're saying in terms of the value of the 27, the 29 firsts, but
I'd walk to Charlotte if I was Danny Ainge to get those picks.
Sure. But that's also, I think the Hornets shouldn't do it. And
I don't think, listen, I think Hornets fans would say the Hornets shouldn't do it.
Right.
I guess never count out a desperate owner.
But this is why it's so fascinating too, because Donovan Mitchell, every indication is he wants to go to a larger market in 2025. Yeah. So if you're a small market team and you have 3 years to build before you run the risk of him walking for nothing, is that worth it?
It's
probably not.
The answer is no.
Right.
It's not.
And so then what big market teams are able to trade for and then likely retain Donovan Mitchell? And you look at, it's not going to be the LA teams. It's not Chicago. It'd be the Nets if they dismantle it in the 3-team deal. It's the Knicks, Miami, but we just talked about them. I guess you could count Toronto. They're like, they're a big market, but I don't know if they're necessarily viewed that way, but they're certainly it's great basketball. It's a great town. Period.
Jeremy, you're spelling it out. The odds on another team doing it are very low. I'm just merely saying I can't sit here and say at one side of my mouth, like, cool, play hardball. It's all good. Whatever happens, happens. And then turn around and try and be disingenuous if a trade did. I just want to acknowledge the fact that if he goes somewhere else, I can't imagine a world in which I'm not a less than pleasant emotion, is coming out of me. That's all.
I guess the question is, how much would that team have to pay in order for it to feel like he was kind of taken from underneath?
Yeah.
Like if they're doing like 2 unprotected firsts and I'm trying to think what that would even mean.
Well, but you're making your own point even stronger, because it would have to be like teams don't have these protected picks that the Knicks have. And so would it be a team giving up 4 unprotected firsts? And if another team gave up 4 unprotected first of their own, I think in that scenario, I'd be like, all right, you know what? I guess tip your cap. But if it was anything less than that, I would probably be a little, I don't know.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Yeah. And I guess
I respect the point though.
Yeah. Appreciate it. And we'll see. It'll drag on until training camp probably. And then we'll go from there. But the second point, which ties into it, is there have been, and we just had someone come on the pod and talk about it from the Lakers standpoint, but it feels as though the Lakers point of view for someone like Julius Randle with Russ and all that, it feels less and less likely to me as time goes on, especially amidst the potential report, depending on the validity of it, but where the Lakers would be willing to now offer 2 first-round picks for Kyrie, because then you don't need to facilitate a deal. And the thing with Randle, I always thought that the fit itself with him going to LA was a little clunkier than ideal, but the idea that they want to run the offense through Anthony Davis more, and he's going to play the 4. And you could have Julius Randle in there, but then aren't the Lakers dealing with the same thing the Knicks might be dealing with now, which is putting Julius in a lesser role than or a less high usage role, a lower usage role.
There's no great fit for him anywhere.
Sure. Well, I still think a team like Charlotte, would make sense. I agree. Mm-hmm. It just wouldn't be Gordon Hayward coming back. It'd probably need to be a little bit more complicated than that. But still, they go away as an option, which then brings us back to the idea of the Knicks trading with the Jazz as a 2-team deal, not getting involved with LA. Who knows? But that's just kind of how I felt through the last couple of weeks as reports trickle in and the pod that we had.
I don't disagree with any of that. I guess I would lean on a pod that is not out yet, but will have dropped by the time this pod drops, which is our conversation with Jake Fisher, who just reiterated something that's been stated many times, but he really hammered it home. It's like the Durant domino needs to fall. And I think all of us can sit here and guess as to what happens after that first domino falls. But ultimately, because first of all, we don't know in which direction that domino will fall, A, B, and we don't know when it's going to fall. It's such a big unknown, and it affects so much of the league. I'm not saying I don't think you're wrong. I'm personally, I don't feel comfortable presuming anything at this point, just because who the fuck knows? Which I know that's great insight, but really, who the hell knows how this is going to shake out ultimately?
Yeah, not me.
nor me.